So you mentioned Ayaan, so might as well mention her again. Ayaan Hirsi Ali. People should look this name up. How has your time with Ayaan changed how you view Western philosophy, maybe even view the world or reality per se? I have to imagine, I mean, just given her life's experience, her trajectory, that is so difficult for either, well, I'll speak for myself, for me to envision in any experiential way, right? How has your time with her affected how you view things? I know that's a very broad question, but I'm going to leave it broad.
Anybody who hasn't read one of my wife's books should do something about that. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Infidel, is a pretty good place to start. That's her life story, her early life story, which gives you a sense of what it was to grow up as a girl in Islam in Somalia, to live in Saudi Arabia, to live in Kenya, to experience radicalization, to be a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and then to go to the Netherlands to escape an arranged marriage, to gradually be exposed to Western freedoms, to begin to question faith, eventually to lose that faith, to become embroiled in the controversies that followed 9/11, to become a national figure in the Netherlands, a member of parliament, then to be the target of a fatwa, of death threats. All of this is in there, and it's an extraordinary story. I've learned that the story there, which is startling and memorable in many ways, is the tip of an iceberg of very deep trauma. I think that's the only way to describe it. And we're still kind of learning about that and learning how to deal with it. So for somebody like me who led a happy life in a loving family where I was given every encouragement, it's humbling to think of a life so different, so much harder. And to realize that that's the life of millions and millions of girls all over the world. So that's point one. Point two is, and I dedicated the book Civilization to Ayaan for this reason, we take for granted the freedoms that we are given at birth. And it's very hard not to take them for granted if you grow up with the freedom of speech and political freedom, the freedom to organize, the freedom of association, all of those freedoms. But when you get to know and love somebody who didn't have those things and had to be persuaded by experience of their value, then you see things in a different light. And I learned more about the value of the Enlightenment from Ayaan than I could have learned from any other source. And that's partly why Civilization is dedicated to her, because you've got to see the benefits of a free society with the eyes of somebody who's lived under unfreedom, with all the discrimination, the handicaps of being a girl in a strictly Muslim society, fully to appreciate them.
I'd second the recommendation on the read. The story is really beyond remarkable. That's an understatement. And you mentioned the fatwa. How do you both relate to safety and fear? How do you think about how much weight to give to fear of what could happen? And I ask, especially in light of the not so distant attack on Salman Rushdie as an example, right? It's not like fatwas are just forgotten, it would seem. I mean, I know there's a lot of coverage around that and many different takes. But how do you think about living life and how much weight to give to fear, what could happen versus other factors?
Well, I won't speak for Ayaan. It would be untrue for me to claim that she doesn't feel fear.
Yeah.
The attack on Salman Rushdie was a heavy blow for us because it was a reminder that these death threats don't have expiry dates. There's no statute of limitations. But fear, I'll answer on my own behalf, is not a factor. I don't fear these people. And I credit that to a Scottish upbringing. My grandfathers faced far greater peril in the world wars. My father's father served on the Western Front in one of the Highland regiments as a teenager. And my mother's father was in Burma with the Royal Air Force fighting the Japanese. They had reasons to feel fear. I don't. And I have a complete contempt for terrorists that is not fake. I moved to the United States after 9/11 because I was supposed to give us a lecture at NYU on, I think it was 9/12. And of course, I never gave that lecture, couldn't fly. But it kind of made my mind up to move to the US and to take a job at NYU, which is what I did. I resigned from Oxford shortly after 9/11. That's definitely wasn't. I don't think I thought it through quite at the time, but it was undoubtedly the Scottish impulse to march towards the sound of gunfire. And ever since I've known Ayaan, I've felt a powerful obligation to protect her and make sure that she is kept safe, but never fear, because historically we face many dangers. One can see that the world is much less dangerous than it was in many respects, and in other respects more dangerous than it's ever been. They didn't have to worry about nuclear war. The risks of catastrophe are in some ways elevated by the advance of science. And in other ways, science is reducing our vulnerability, extending our lifespans, giving us a shot even if we're diagnosed with cancer. And I keep telling her and others the dangers that we face include terrorists, but the probability is probably higher that we have an automobile accident or one of us gets diagnosed with cancer. So be not afraid. And the culture which I love about my part of the world, the culture of Scotland is we don't feel fear. You can do anything to us, but you can't actually frighten us. And if you're brought up with that, if that's sort of really drummed into you, that's a great source of strength. Of course, one fears odd things. I've always been more afraid of losing my reputation or my honor than losing my life. But the things that the terrorists want to induce, the kind of fear they want to induce, that is entirely foreign to me. And I defy them and I despise them. And I will use everything I can do to thwart them, because ultimately their threat is it's a threat that you can thwart. Salman Rushdie made a terrible mistake in announcing that he was dispensing with security and saying at the time he published his last book, I need to live my life. I said at the time that was a mistake, and it was. That is not our approach. But no fear, no way.